Hello world, it's Wednesday, August 5th, 2026, and here's what happened this week in PHP internals. 13 stories this week, so let's get into it. But first, this week's episode is brought to you by Tideways. When a request is slow in production, Tideways takes you from symptom to root cause in minutes with profiling, tracing, and monitoring built specifically for PHP. It installs in 5 minutes, there's no credit card required, and it's hosted in Germany. Start your free trial at tideways.com. This week's top story, the mass deprecation vote for PHP 8.6 is in its final week. All 35 ballots close Monday, August 10th, and Gina P. Banyard posted the 1-week reminder so nobody gets caught out. Most of the 35 are passing comfortably. The interesting ones are the holdouts. List is now deadlocked at 21 to 21, a flat tie, nowhere near the 2/3 it needs. Reserving let stands at 22 to 11, which is exactly 2/3. A single vote in either column decides it. The dechunk filter sits at 17 to 15, still well short. The getText_alias is failing at 9 to 20, and reserving inout and inout is failing at 7 to 20 with 12 abstentions. Everything else you'd recognize from the list, the object parameter cleanups, the isDouble function family, SPL classes, is cruising towards the finish. The thread itself turned into a corrections desk this week. Calvin Buckley relayed a note from Nora, who isn't on the list, pointing out, the text for the metaphone deprecation isn't fully right. It lists linguistics as a replacement package, but that one actually uses PHP source's metaphone internally too. Wayland Dew, who proposed that item, conceded the doc's point while standing by the idea, writing, my point in deprecating it is to stop using ancient metaphone algo as a whole. Voters seem unbothered. Metaphone stands at 19 to 6 with 15 abstentions. Rowan Tommins raised a bigger flag on reserving is. It would collide with Hamcrest, the test assertion framework, whose PHP port has over 500 million packages to installs, and an is function all over its README. He urged, I think we should think very carefully whether we can avoid disrupting that much code. So far, the voters disagree. Is stands at 26 to 9. Meanwhile, Sjord Langkemper, who proposed the contested dechunk item, stepped back from the argument with unusual candor, writing, the discussion phase wasn't properly completed yet, and I did a poor job in merging all opinions into an RFC proposal. He'd rather let the voting play out, and he closed by asking Jakub Zelenka, who led last week's objections, whether anyone could help lighten his workload. And Camille Tequiela's question from last week, why deprecate defines dead flag instead of just deleting the parameter, got its answer. Tim Dusterhuis pointed out that deleting it isn't silent, since extra arguments throw an argument count error, and concluded, making it explicit and deciding that the parameter will go in PHP 9 is a good thing. Function autoloading, Paul M. Jones' 5th generation attempt, went to a vote Thursday afternoon. It lasted about a day. Matteo Beccati opened the replies with praise and a caveat, calling it the best autoloading proposal up to date, but adding, perhaps I'm biased as release manager, but last-minute RFCs are making me nervous. I hope you understand. Then Tim Dusterhuis spotted the procedural problem, writing, in fact, the start of the vote is in violation of our policy, since there was no intent to vote message in the last 7 days. Paul's intent notice was 2 weeks old, and a July 15 revision had reset the clock besides. Paul took it entirely in stride, replying, so my apologies. I'll pull the vote and wait for, looks like 6 weeks. For the record, the widget stood at 2 yes to 11 no when he pulled it, so the pause may be a mercy. Tim ran the math. Cancellation carries a 2-week cooldown, so a mid-August reopen is technically possible, but he judged it likely not useful to reopen the vote without making further changes. And offered one. Resolve namespaced functions before falling back to globals. Rowan Tommins countered that the fallback path makes that slow, and pointed instead at Michael's namespace autoloader idea, loading a whole namespace's functions at once, calling it a much cleaner way forward. Paul is unbothered, saying he'll come back to it after 8.6 is fully out the door. That's the second vote in 2 weeks pulled by its own author over the intent to vote rule. Seyfettin Gamati's literal scalar types will not be reopening. His retraction last week came with a plan to re-vote. This week he cancelled that too. After asking the release manager exactly where the freeze line sits, the answer, the effective cutoff isn't the Beta 1 announcement on August 13th, it's the creation of the Beta 1 tag on August 11th. And a vote opened now would close after the tag exists. So the RFC is retargeted to the next PHP version, text final, intent withdrawn. Matteo Beccati apologized for the ambiguity, admitting his emails were pointing the 13th as deadline for RFCs. And went further, having RFCs end voting so close to the feature freeze is a terrible idea, as it gives very little wiggle room in case something unexpected comes out. Seyfettin took it well, noting his own retarget email had already started a 14-day cooldown anyway. In his words, 8.6 was out of reach the moment that email hit the list. Pierre Joy pushed back on the caution, arguing beta phases exist exactly for this reason, wider base of testers. He also vented about the calendar. Between the new policies and the Christmas quiet period, the time left in a year is low, very low now. And with the clock pressure gone, Tim Dusterhuis gave the RFC one more read and found just one loose end. The matching semantics vote has no explicit tiebreaker, and otherwise signed off. No further comments to the contents of the actual proposal, he said. 2 carryover votes are now in the books, and both passed emphatically. The time duration class closed Friday. The primary finished at 35-1 with 2 abstentions, 97%. The naming question went to full method names, multiply by, divide by, negate, absolute, at 30-2. So PHP 8.6 officially gets a duration class. The minimum supported versions RFC closed Thursday, requiring AutoConf 2.71 passed at 27-2 with 5 abstentions, and requiring com reset connection passed clean at 26-0. That second one has a coda. Alexander Carrillo, who'd argued during the vote that the connection reset change carries an undisclosed BC break, requested RFC Karma on Saturday to propose making the new behavior optional. Ilya Tavilo granted it Tuesday with a reality check noting the vote result was quite clear and the time for another RFC discussion and vote has run out. He left any next step to the release managers. 3 ballots are still open, and none of them drew a single email this week. The voting is doing the talking. Caleb White's pipe assignment operator closes next Tuesday. As of recording, it stands at 12 yes, 10 no, 6 abstaining, 54.5%, needing 2/3. It has climbed from a dead even, but the gap is real. Nix.'s read-only property defaults closes Friday morning. It still hasn't drawn a single no, 22-0 with 5 abstentions. And Colette Alam's const object property rights closes Saturday. That one sits at 14-2, comfortably above the line. A new discussion opens Saturday. Short Langkamper wants to stop curl setopt from leaking secrets into stack traces. The problem is that one function sets everything, and he laid it out cleanly, saying, the value for curl opt password is likely sensitive, the value for curl opt return transfer is not, and curl opt URL may be sensitive sometimes. He brought 3 options, 2 of them with working pull requests. Blanket mark the values as sensitive and lose debug info. Teach curl setopt to which options are secret at an engine level, performance cost, or make callers wrap secrets in a sensitive parameter value. Ilya Miroslavov Ilyev questioned the premise, arguing stack traces shouldn't be reachable in production at all, and asked how you debug a wrong password you can no longer see. Matthew Wire-O'Finney leaned opt-in, warning that automatic detection will be difficult and a game of whack-a-mole, since options carry arbitrary headers and content and floated, letting the engine accept sensitive value wrappers in any function call, so callers could opt in regardless of the signature. Jorg Soa wants PHP's undefined function errors to answer back. His pull request adds "did you mean" suggestions, call defined when you meant define, and the error names the function you were probably reaching for, the way Python and Ruby already do. His question to the list was procedural. Does this need an RFC, or is PR consensus enough? Sjoerd Lenkepper answered with the policy exempting error message from the BC rules, noting, rephrasing error messages is not subject to the backwards compatibility break policy. And he's in favor. Matteo Beccati liked it too, suggested Python's exact shape for the method, and nudged the list for feedback given the freeze is days away. If the sentiment holds, Jorg wants to extend it to methods, classes, and constants next. The only debate so far is punctuation, how many brackets and question marks one error message can carry. The generics conversation is officially on hold until after 8.6 ships, which isn't stopping anyone. Henrik Skov wrote in asking for generics to be opt-in, worrying, adding reified generics will just make it even slower. His sketch, type erase generics hiding inside comment syntax checked by IDE plugins or a C extension with the engine substituting mixed at compile time. Holly Schilling's reply opened like a sermon. Have you heard the good word of monomorphized generics? Performance matches standard typed code. As she restated the schedule, generics talk waits until September or October, so it doesn't bury the 8.6 release work, with her inbox open in the meantime. Osama Aldemiri's Preg throw-on error RFC got its first real design review. Bernard Scarp asked whether compile failures and runtime failures deserve separate exception classes. Ron Tommen supplied the rulebook. PHP's throwables policy says extension exceptions extend the extension's own base class, never the SPL ones. Osama's position is one Preg exception with the door open, and he had a concrete reason. Today, the useful detail of a compile failure lives only in the warning text, so a dedicated compilation exception would carry internal error and little else. That connects to Christian Schneider's other catch. Under the flag, a bad pattern raises both the warning and the exception. Osama confirmed it and defended it as the honest trade. The warning is where the detail is, while agreeing that exception instead of warning is the cleaner end state, once the exception can carry that detail itself. Quick hits. Thursday was patch day. Security releases landed across 4 branches at once: 8.2.33, 8.3.33, 8.4.24, and 8.5.9. Upgrade when you can. The same day brought PHP 8.6.0 Alpha 3, an early test release, and the 8.6 release managers posted the formal 1-week warning. The soft freeze hits when the Beta 1 tag is created next Thursday, August 11th. Beta 1 itself lands Thursday the 13th. Every 8.6 RFC vote must be closed before then, and the hard freeze follows at RC1 on September 22nd. So that's the week. The 35 ballot deprecation vote closes Monday with list deadlocked and let balanced exactly on the 2/3 line. A function auto-loading vote opened and was pulled inside a day. The second author in 2 weeks to stop his own ballot over the process rules. Literal types bowed out of 8.6 on its own terms. Duration and the minimum versions RFC are officially in. Pipe assignment has a week to find its 2/3, and the freeze arrives Tuesday. Links to every thread are below. If you found this interesting, a like or a comment helps more people find it, and share it with whoever on your team is tracking these votes. Subscribe with the bell if you want these the moment they're posted each week, and if you missed last week's episode, that's a good one to watch next. Thanks again to Tideways.com for supporting this week's episode. We are Artisan Build. See you next week.